Hello Hoppers, and welcome to Game Maker Studio 1.2. It is super late at night right now. Well, I guess you can see what time it is. I've been trying to get to sleep for hours and I can't, so I just decided to act on an itch to make a few tutorials, which is something I haven't done on my channel before, but I see a lot of games made in Game Maker and a lot of them don't turn out so well. So I thought I'd make like a series of quick tutorials on just some basic things in it. I'm not gonna bother with all of like the super basic stuff in it. I'm gonna assume that you know a bit about the program, and the goal of this series is gonna be to be as succinct and to the point as possible. So without further introduction, this is a tutorial about how to achieve some basic physics, using the actual built-in physics engine in Game Maker Studio. So first thing you need to do is obviously you need to have some sprites set up. So we're going to create a couple sprites. This one's going to be SPR circle. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and start this off and give it a smaller size than this. I'm going to give it a size of 16 by 16, and I'm going to open it up and just put a little circle in there. So let's make it a green circle. Alright. And I should be, come on, yeah, there it goes. Now that we've drawn that in, and just check, and that's done. Alright, let's make another one. This one's going to be SPR wall. We're going to edit this one and just leave it at the default 32 by 32, and let's fill this one in with another color, so I'm just going to pick that. Sure. Alright, looks good. Now, oops, one thing I forgot. On SPR circle, we need to click center right here to make its origin at the very middle of the circle so that the physics work correctly on it. With the wall, it doesn't really matter that much, but we'll have to pay special attention to the shape of the physics later on. So I'm going to go ahead and create a couple objects. This is going to be obj circle. Make another one called obj wall. Oops. Oh, come on. And we're going to give them the correct sprites. Oops. This one's going to be wall, and this one's going to be circle. Okay. Now what we need to do, obviously, we need to turn on physics for these guys. And by default, circle is actually the shape that you'll get. And because we centered the origin of the sprite, it's actually going to be already in the correct spot. So we've already got a circle that's perfectly matched with our, with our pixels there. And this is fairly done. We'll have to add a couple more things in a minute, but for all intents and purposes, this is going to work pretty well. Just to go over a few things here, density is exactly what it means in real life. It's how dense the mass of the circle is. So if you make this a higher number, it will effectively weigh more. And this is helpful because if you want something very large that acts like it's very light, like, you know, a house made out of styrofoam or something, you can make this number very low. But if you want something like a cannonball, you can make this a very high number and make the object very small, and it would still weigh a lot. Anyway, restitution is a fancy word for how bouncy it is. Anything over 1 will actually make it gain momentum with every bounce, which will kind of break physics. Same with a few of these things, like friction. If it's below 0 or above 1, it's going to act kind of irregularly. And these other things, it's you can group the different type colliding objects together. You can have a bit of, basically this will act like friction from the air. It'll just something that'll be constantly slowing it down slightly even through the air, and then angular dampening will slow down the rotation of the object over time. Alright, so this is pretty much done. We're going to go into the wall, turn on physics for it, and the wall we don't want to move. And the way that you make something not ever move as far as Game Maker is concerned is give it a density of 0, which gives it effectively 0 weight, but that actually ends up meaning that it, as far as Game Maker's calculations go, it will consider that this wall is completely immovable. It's just always going to stay in the same spot. Let's add 2 more things. We're going to call this one obj dynamic. And we're going to add another one called obj static. And what these are going to do, these are going to be our parents for our objects. So anything that we want to remain still is going to have a parent of object static. And anything we want to move is going to have a parent object dynamic. And the reason we're going to do this is that turning on physics is all well and good, but Game Maker won't actually track collisions until you tell them that specific collisions matter. And if you have a whole bunch of objects, it's just a pain to go through and tell it that every single thing matters. So instead, if you have a parent, you can just have the parents know that they're supposed to collide with each other, and you don't ever have to program any of the other things. So what I mean by that is I can tell dynamic to have a collision event with other dynamics, so I can have multiple balls in there. And because if I were to click OK right now, it's got this event here, and we really just need an empty event to tell it that the collision matters. But if I were to leave it empty, it automatically deletes when I save it out. So I need to put in a collision event and put in a little bit of code, and the code is / I like peanut butter. All right. It really doesn't matter as long as you put 2 slashes. That just turns into a comment, but as long as there's something in here, it won't delete this event. And we really just need that split second that the computer is going to check this collision to see if it needs to do anything, and that split second is enough for it to know that the collision matters and it's actually going to do something about it. So we need one more. We need for it to also run into object static. And an important thing to know about these parents is that they do not need to be in the room. Anyway, so I don't know, I guess I'm on a peanut butter thing today. Oh, what was that? That was weird. Alright, save that. Okay, these are done. And what I mean by it doesn't need to be in the room is that when we have a room here, all we'll actually need in the room is the walls. So I'm going to hold down Control and Shift and then just drag my mouse so I can get these all in very quickly. And then we may not actually need the balls in there because I'm going to put them in there in a different way. But just to check it's actually working, I'm going to put one in just to make sure it can bounce around. And before this game will actually work, I need to go into Physics, click on Room as Physics World, and I'm going to make this number a bit higher because 10 seems a bit low to me. So if I were to push check, this should run right now. Yeah, cool. So I've got a nice little bouncing ball there. Now, if you notice, it is completely in the wrong spot because I forgot to do something. If I go into Object Wall, let's see, its collision shape is a circle, and it's going to be coming out of this corner right here because if you look at the sprite, its origin is at 0, 0. If I were to center it, the circle would be coming out of the center of it, but it's easier to place when it's at 0, 0 because it fits into that grid that we have. So if I switch this to box, it's still not going to be correct because if I go to modify collision shape, you see it's still coming out of the origin, so we'll need to move the corners of it a bit. Awesome. If we had shape, you would actually be able to tell it something a bit more accurately. Something to keep in mind though, if you do have something that's a bit of a weird shape, all of the corners need to poke outwards. If you have any corners that go inwards like this, it will actually just completely freak out on you and not work correctly. So we need to have, for this, just a box, and yeah, that should work a little bit better. So if I save this and run it now, it'll take a second to load, and cool, it's working very, very nicely. Now, let's give us a little bit more interesting stuff going on. I'm gonna make one more object. This is gonna be obj spawner. Okay. Doesn't need a sprite actually. I'm just going to give it one event. I'm going to say global mouse, global left button, create an instance of object circle at mouse X and mouse Y. And yeah, that's going to work. It's going to just spam these out. I'm going to say okay. I'm going to go back in here and delete this guy. And that should be about that for there. Okay, let's see how this works now. Oh, forgot one more thing. I need to go into the room and put this spawner actually in the room. So I'm going to just put it over in the corner. Not that we'll ever actually see it because I have, it doesn't have a sprite to display, but now that it's present, it should be making all these beautiful little bouncing. Now, I don't know what's up with my little sprite there. It must be, that doesn't actually look very nice, but you can see how it's tracking the physics pretty well, and they're all responding dynamically in there. If I wanted to, I could change a few other things like add event, draw, and I could make, you know, so much more complex stuff. Like I could say draw, what was it? I need a circle there probably. Yep. Circle self.x self.y with a radius, oops, left, self.y the radius of, ooh, what was the radius? I think it was about 8, because it was 16 by 16. I think that should work. And if you're confused about what you should be typing in here, it tells you everything that you need at the bottom for every single thing. So if you start typing in something that you need with physics but you don't quite know what it is, if you just wait a second, anything that has that in it up to that point, it will just give you a nice little suggestion, and then it will tell you what you need in there. And if you've forgotten when you click on it, if I were to click, once I start typing this parentheses here, you'll see everything that you need right down here inside of it. Alright, so I'm going to get rid of that. Check. Save. It's not going to look perfect because we won't see it rotate, but it should show a much more clean circle. Yeah, so I didn't tell them what color to be, but they do look far, far cleaner than they did before. And yeah, that's basically all you need to do to set up a basic physics engine in GameMaker. Tell me what you thought about this little tutorial. I'm going to be coming back with a lot more later on. Hopefully you enjoyed this, and yeah, I'll see you next time, Hoppers. Bye.